Hello, everyone. We welcome you to the Inspire Me Today show by My Startup PD for a panel discussion on mental health awareness. Before we begin, we from the MST family would like to pay homage to all the martyrs of the Galwan Valley. We shall be forever indebted to their sacrifice. uh, what should I say, 2020 has been a tough year for everyone across the globe. And, with the fear of the deadly virus still looming in, the economic crisis, the isolation, the India China conflict, and, the tragic loss of current very famous people that the nation has to bear. In the light of recent loss of very famous actor Sushant Singh Rajput, it was now opportune for us to bring to the forefront the issue and the issue of mental health, and make people more aware of the mental health. Now there have been a lot of webinars going on around this topic, and so we want to just touch upon the why part, but we want to be more specific on the how to get rid of it part, and the identification, obviously, that how do you identify it. So we have joining us an esteemed panelist of experts with us, and they have been in the field of mental well-being since years. So I welcome Captain Sumisha Shankar, who's founder of Antardhwani, and she's an international dance meditation teacher as well as a classical yoga therapist. She has a unique approach of combining the world of science, military ethics, and the Indian wisdom of Yoga Sutra to create immersive sessions. She's taken her work world over and worked with various organizations from across the globe. We also have joining us Prachi Vesh. So just give me a moment. Okay, so Prachi Vesh, I'm so sorry. She's a clinical psychologist and a psychotherapist in this field for over 15 years. She's the founder of the Emotional Wellness Initiatives and the Hope Network.in. She's an expert in addressing issues of relationships, intimacy, anxiety disorders, and recovering from the trauma of emotional abuse. We also welcome Alok Tong, a mental wellness expert, meditation teacher, and mindfulness coach. He's the founder of the Eastern Mindfulness, and he advocates mental wellness through mindful and conscious living. Thank you so much, all three of you, for taking out your precious time to be with us here today. So, starting with you, Captain Sumisha, how serious is the problem? Like now, considering the issue surfaces only when there is a high profile death.
So the problem is, so my voice is loud and clear.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
yeah, we
Yeah,
can hear you.
post lockdown, this is the only thing I have right now. Emotional health is very much of concern, not today, but it was always. See, basically and specifically in the entire world, emotions are not taken into consideration in terms of like how to be educated and how to be aware. And mental health is directly proportional to our emotional health. Like, in fact, both of them are like taken together in terms of like when we see from the classical yoga perspective, it's not about mental health, it's not about emotional health, it's about the level of the consciousness where we are in, the perspective, the filter what we are looking at. So I am so much aware because from the army, it's just that there is a chalta hai attitude in India in specific. We tend to brush our issues under the carpet. And in the army, I have seen when you shoot the terrorist, you also undergo something, So PTSD is very common in the army. I started my work in the prison of Arthur Road and Baikula jail. I saw the sense of depression there. And from there onwards, as on date today, when I'm dealing with cases like this, the environment has taken a toll on everybody's mental and emotional health because binge watching is the new normal. So when your entire point of reference only goes for a toss, then I don't know. It's very difficult for the newer generation who are below 20 or below 25 to relate to the grounding of their own self, because everything is so fluid in the market as of now. So yes, it is very important to get educated about emotional health. It's the need of the hour, basically. That's it.
So, Prachi, what do you think? Is this problem prevalent across the urban population or a certain group of people, or is it everywhere?
Um, Arushi, I think like what Sumisha said, we as a race also, not just, I'm not even just talking about the culture, this is all over the world. We are not, it's not in our upbringing to be emotionally coached, especially when it comes to uncomfortable emotions. You know, all of us are in the habit of labeling emotions like this is a positive emotion, this is a negative emotion. Actually, emotions do not have a positive or negative balance. Some of them may be more comfortable, some of them may be less comfortable to bear, but each emotion has a function of its own. And we never learn that. We never learn that if we are feeling sad, that also has a function. If we are angry, that also has a function. If we are afraid, that also has a function. And that is why overall, everywhere, I think in all strata of society, every time it comes to uncomfortable emotions, the person who's feeling it also wants to get away from the moment and distract themselves. And the person who they are sharing it with, if at all they are sharing, also gets uncomfortable because, you know, absorbing someone else's uncomfortable emotion can get very uncomfortable, and they also tend to sort of, you know, sweep it aside and or try to fix it immediately, that, oh, you know, this is what you should do, or that is what you should do. And this is prevalent across all strata of society. So yeah, this is not just an urban problem, it's a problem everywhere.
Now, Alok, it's such a common problem. Why do we tend to brush it under the carpet? Why is there a stigma around it? Why are people not very comfortable talking about it?
Arushi, first of all, the thing is, there is an external thing that we focus on, and there is an internal thing. We have two environments that we are dealing with, right? There's an external environment and there's an internal environment. And now, basically, in my programs to my audiences, I generally say this, that we are living in this, what I call it as an attention economy, right? Everyone around us, they are vouching for our attention, whether it is your television or your internet or Google or your applications. You keep on getting notifications. And the more applications you pour in your mobile phone, the more busy you are. And basically what's happening is we don't have time to peep inside. We are so much busy with what's happening outside that we don't get time to peep inside. And what I really think, Arushi, is that awareness is the primal principle. Awareness is something that we really need to have in our day-to-day lives, because when we want to handle and manage anything in life, right, awareness is the prerequisite for that. When it comes to our thoughts, when it comes to our emotions, if we are not aware of what we are thinking, if we are not aware of what we are going through the entire day, through the thicks and thins of the life, then we'll not be able to handle it. Then we'll fall a prey to it and not master it. So in order to handle and manage anything, awareness is the prerequisite. Now, today, if you see, people are so much involved in the external noises. There's a lot of noise which is happening. As I said, it's attention economy, and where content, it's a content economy when there's a lot of content which is poured day in and day out, and we are lost in that content. So now what is really important here is that we bring in some kind of awareness. Now, when we talk about millennials as well, now if you see millennials at this moment of time, they're going through various ups and downs, and they're not ready and not comfortable to share their innermost feelings to people outside, because they think that people are not able to understand them, right? And that's where empathy and compassion comes into picture. So what we really need to do as of now is, number one, first become self-aware, awareness towards the self, and then awareness towards others. So basically, I put it in this way that it becomes easier for everyone to understand. There are three levels of awareness that we need to integrate. Number one, awareness towards things which are happening in me. This is what every individual needs to look at. awareness of things which are happening in me, awareness of things which are happening with me, and awareness about the things which are happening around me. So when I talk about awareness towards things which are happening in me, I'm talking about my thoughts, my emotions, my interpretations, and my sensations. And when I talk about awareness towards the things which are happening with me, that is where incidents come in picture, where I'm the epicenter, where I'm hit directly, or maybe it's an interaction or a relationship. And when I talk about awareness of things which are happening around me, that's where I'm talking about situations. So any kind of situation, COVID-19 is the best example. So any kind of situation that takes place, and I need to be aware of what's really happening. If we are aware, we'll be able to handle and manage. Yeah, Ruchir.
So Captain Sumisha, coming to you, how do we identify the signs within us and around us?
So basically, I have a very different approach towards handling this. In my entire scenario, I always help people who feel very full of anxiety or depression or any kind of loss through the beauty of life. Now, this philosophy has taken its practical side through art, and I teach this because I have learned as a child artist. My mother is an artist, my dad is a scientist. So I have learned professionally singing, classical dancing, painting, theater over the entire till my college life. I have done this like completely and wholesomely, and also undergoing a low self-esteem because I was dancing was for performance. Dancing was not beyond performance. And today I utilize this science, these tools in order to help my students, patients, clients, organizations to identify their blink factors. So anybody who comes to me with any of the problems, I hear them out and I tell them like, so I give them towards like, it's like sunshine. I put them through the sunshine and I work on maximizing strengths. And that's how they need to pick it up, because often we are so used to wired to kind of, look at our weaknesses that we get like completely muddled over it. But also that I know that most of the cases can be handled by yourself. But over the years, I've understood this is also a precise training. Like it's just not that like if you paint and if you're a dancer and if you just act, like if I do dance meditation, I'll be all fine. No, it's not like that. As Alok said, the awareness, appreciation, and acknowledgement. And anybody like Prachi would vouch for it, like the psychology, the positive psychology, what we have to build up is training. So it is actually very scientific that the science of uh, being happy is like that. You will feel a sense of balance. Everybody can feel that sense of balance. Everybody can feel that sense of groundness there. See, happiness is very fleeting. So these all small little minor tweaks, and most of the cases I have handled, they have been brilliant with their IQ. So I nurture their EQ. I have a like you nurture their EQ through these things, and they themselves come to a reflective state where we can talk to them. So this is very, very important, and through body mind connectivity, it helps to express our emotions in a manner which we cannot communicate in words, because 99% of our communication, Arushi, is emotional, 1% is intellectual. So mental health or any of our problems cannot be handled just by putting our brain into it. It has to be a body mind connectivity. It has to be something which gives you a mirror where you can see yourself, okay, this is not that bad and this is something else. So like nipping at the like bud is really important. And this emotional band-aid, the emotional nurturing needs to come into picture instead of trying to say, and I'm not a very person, I coming from the army, I'm not very disciplinarian in terms of like the way we were supposed to. When I had my problems, you're not made up of emotions. So I used to look at the Buddhist monk and I used to say, oh, but then he is too cute. I'm not like that. Like you understand that? Like he was like all quiet and all like very nice. But then I was not like that. So in order to have this, the science That's how we have to identify it, that if we have a lot of mood swings and this and that, we need to get back to our balanced personality.
Uh, Prachi, before coming to you, I would quickly like to welcome Jay Parekh, who is a financial analyst. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Hello. Hi, Prachi. Thanks for introducing me. So basically, I'm working with Bajaj Finance right now, and I'm into the finance department. The idea, so basically, I have started my own social group called as Ways to Overcome, wherein we deal with such kind of problems. Basically, the idea struck me when I was personally going through it. I didn't know what to do at that point of time. So at that point of time, I was lucky enough that my parents were, very good. I mean, very sharp to identify it and understand it. And I sought some professional help out of it, and finally, I have come out of it. So today, what I feel is that to make people aware about it, we need to educate people. So here, I am on a mission today to spread awareness, and if someone is in them to of their respective fields. So I'm trying to make have three of the professionals who are into this field. So what I feel is basically this is the need of the hour.
So Prachi, we have a question from Anamika. She says that what are those specific signs and symptoms? Like for me, for example, anxiety could be that bolt of adrenaline, with those uninvited thoughts rushing through your mind incoherently, that breathlessness, heaviness in the heart. What are those other specific signs and symptoms? So she says that one of her team members started underperforming, and the reason was one of the past bad experience in the team member's life. So I would like you to tell those specific signs and symptoms that when you realize you're actually going through an anxiety attack and not just any other worry.
Right. That's an excellent question, Anamika, right? So thanks to her for asking this. See, anxiety by itself is an ability that we humans have, which is a signal for threat. Okay, so by itself, anxiety is a protective mechanism given to us in our brains. It's like biologically programmed, let's say. What happens is that when when we were living in caves and all, and that time, life wasn't so complicated. All we had to do was hunt for a living and protect ourselves from natural elements, and find shelter to sleep at night. So the brain was really simple, and also in reaction more instinctive. So if a wild animal was right in front of you, either you had to run from it or you had to stay and fight, which is commonly known as the fight or flight response. And the brain was programmed to do that. As society evolved, and the typical brain diagram that you see today is actually an evolution of the past few thousand years. And we developed the logical brain. So now our threats are not the usual wild animals and natural elements. Our threats are more psychological. The threat of losing something, threat of being ridiculed, the threat of losing a social status. But the point is, the brain doesn't have eyes. For it, a threat is a threat, and that part of the brain which reacts to threat is still activated in the same way. So in the example that Anamika gave, this person has had apparently a traumatic experience in the past, and that trauma is triggering the current anxiety attack. Trauma and anxiety are also two different things. Anxiety is a manifestation of trauma, but trauma itself is a cluster of syndromes, right? So you asking me about the signs. On the surface, the signs can be the ones that you described, of course, the racing heart, sweaty palms, clammy hands, cold feet. You get this really hot feeling behind your ears or your cheeks sometimes when you get really anxious, inability to focus, especially when we are talking about being triggered from past trauma. There has to be hypervigilance. The person becomes extremely hyper-tuned to their environment, paying too much attention to all the stimuli that is coming in. The startle response increases. The smallest thing can startle them. And then you have a physiological arousal that we've already talked about. You also have intrusive thoughts, this loop of thoughts which keeps coming and coming and coming, and you can't stop it the more you try to resist, the worse it becomes. And also nightmares, dreams, then focus and concentration is lost. The stamina goes down, stamina to sit and attend to a task. So these are there. And when we are talking about an anxiety attack, this becomes a more escalated form of the symptoms that I'm talking about, because it goes out of control for this person. And there's a lot of biological factors at play when we are having an anxiety attack, or even for depression for that matter. So a lot of times, especially when you're having anxiety, like let's say somebody's running behind you with a dagger, right? I said the mind is in the protect mode, right? Somebody's running behind you with a dagger, you would not stop to analyze that, oh, do I have shoes in my feet? Should I run? Which direction should I run? You won't stop to make that analysis. You need to act quick. And that is what your brain in protect mode is doing. It has kept you in survival mode. So the blood supply to the thinking center of the brain actually goes down. So many times when an anxiety attack, you're like, rationally, I know this is what I should be doing, but I cannot. You really cannot, because your brain is not really assisting you there. So the idea at that point of time, at the anxiety attack, is the first thing to do is to identify what is happening, to learn what is happening. What am I feeling right now? Like just sit and observe your body. No analysis, no judgment. Why, what, how? No, just identify the signs and symptoms that you're observing right now. That's the first thing that this colleague needs to do. And then, of course, a healing process needs to happen as far as the trauma is concerned. It's a long process. Trauma doesn't go by itself. There's a lot of psychological techniques, tools which are to be utilized.
So, Alok, I'm sure there is a stage when you cannot do without the professional help. But then there is a stage when it can be managed at home with lifestyle changes. Can you suggest to our viewers those lifestyle changes before they seek professional help?
So yes, Arushi, as Prachi rightly said, we are living in a time when there's a lot of insecurity and uncertainty, a lot of ambiguity out there. And when we look at the current times, when we talk about COVID-19, no one had thought that something like COVID would hit us hard on our face, right? And when we talk about fear, basically, as Prachi rightly bifurcated about the fear and anxiety and the anxiety attack and stuff like that. So, and yes, the brain, we are emotional beings, right? We are emotional beings because our limbic brain is always in charge. And that's where awareness comes into picture. So I would like to give a quick formula to all our viewers. If they can implement this, number one is awareness, of course, but then, see, at any moment of time when we are going through the thicks and thins of life, when we are going through this troublesome problems, right? Then the only thing that is required at that moment of time is peace, some kind of mental and emotional peace, right? So this would stand as a formula, PEACE. So let's use this as an abbreviation so it becomes easier for us to remember as well. So here P stands for pause, right? Whatever problem you're going through now, this is like a self-help formula that anyone can implement. The first thing is pause yourself. Whatever you are going through, just pause. You need to hold yourself. The second thing is E. E stands for exhale. Now, basically what happens is when we exhale longer, our breathing is divided into 3 different parts. Number one is inhalation, then there is a pause, and there is an exhalation, right? If you just take a moment and try to introspect and become aware of your breath, you will get to know that there is an inhalation, then there is a pause, and there is an exhalation. So now what happens is in E, what you have to do is you have to get into longer exhalations. So, our nervous system has parasympathetic nervous system and a sympathetic nervous system. When we start exhaling for a longer period of time, what happens is our parasympathetic nervous system gets activated. As Prachi rightly said, flight and fight mode. So sympathetic nervous system basically takes care of the fight and flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system takes care of the freeze response. That's basically the relaxation response that we really need when we are going through those trouble period or any stresses. So first, number one, P. P stands for pause, take a pause. E stands for exhale. Start exhaling longer. So you can follow a breathing pattern when you're breathing for 4 counts and then exhaling for 8 counts, right? So the exhalations are longer than your inhalation. So quickly, within few seconds, you will be activating your parasympathetic nervous system. Then comes A. Now, when your parasympathetic nervous system is activated, that's when you cascade into the lower levels of your brain frequencies. So that's when you are calm, when you are composed, right? That's what we experience when we are meditating. Post meditating, you are completely in a different zone, mental zone altogether. So that's what we are talking about, getting into the theta base. The theta base happens when you start exhaling longer. Then comes awareness. So awareness then automatically comes. You don't have to run behind awareness, but when you get into the theta base, you get into awareness mode. So A, awareness. Now you have to become aware that what is it that is actually bothering you? Is it a thought? Is it an emotion? Is it some kind of interpretation? Is it some experience that is haunting you right now in the present? You actually have to become aware of it. Now, when you become aware of anything, as I rightly said earlier, that when you become aware of something, that's when you unbox the power of choice. Because with awareness, you bring and breed a lot of clarity. And wherever you direct your awareness, that's where you unbox clarity. And when you unbox clarity, that's when you can make a better choice. So C stands for choice. Then you have to make a choice. Should I respond or react? And when you make a proper choice, and that's where E comes, and that's the time to execute. So without making a right choice, if you start executing, then that's reaction and not response. So first, it starts with taking a pause. Then you start exhaling, so that you have to get into cascade into the lower levels of your brain frequency. Then you become aware of what exactly is bothering you. Then you have to make the right choice. And once you make the right choice, you have to execute. So this is something which is very handy. And anyone, before going to any professional help, this is what they can do as something which they can keep in the pocket and use it as and when required. Yeah.
I'm sure those tips are going to be very helpful for our viewers. We are going to be talking to someone who's been through anxiety and depression himself. So Jay, what were those signs that told you that you're going through a problem and that you need to seek help?
So see, basically, to let you know, I was in my final year of engineering at that point of time, and things weren't going as I was thinking. And at that point of time, I started panicking for small things, whatever were around me. Like ma'am, she described that your palms and your legs become sweaty, basically. Then you start hyperventilating. You can't breathe. You feel like you're passing out. So that is when, like sir told, the formula of peace. That is when this is very much necessary, because after going through this, I read quite a bit of many articles on the net, started trying to research about things, and that is when I came to know that yes, this is what is happening, and the brain is just playing tricks around along with me. And then I went to a professional. He guided me in a correct way, and then I started my basic exercises of yoga, meditation, and all. That is what brought me out of this completely. And today, that is why I am on a mission to spread awareness, help people, because this is more important than physical health. See, if you're physically not well, you might manage, but if you're not mentally well, it will become very difficult for you to manage.
So is that why you started Ways to Overcome? What do you really want to achieve through your mission?
Okay, so to give you a glance about it, Ways to Overcome is a social platform. Like, we have professionals along with us, like we have the three people on board right now, right? So we help the people, the common people who are going through various issues, and to get in touch with these kind of professionals where they can help them find solutions. That is why the name Ways to Overcome. So the title is apt, because you can place any kind of word in front of it, like for example, ways to overcome anxiety, ways to overcome depression. This is, it is a self explanatory word in general.
Captain Sumisha, you've been using dance, meditation, and classical yoga to help people overcome the challenges and the mental health concerns. How do you do that, and how effective is that?
So that's the entire gamut you're asking me. So what I've landed up doing is things in a very creative manner. So as Jay has already, and Prachi and Alok, Jay has gone to a professional, and Prachi herself is a professional, Alok. So the only thing what I kind of bring into picture is the body and mind connectivity, because our mental health. So before I start this, I actually, when I stepped out of the army, I wanted to become a dancer, like classical dancer, because I have been a classical dancer throughout my life. I'm from Kathak Kendra, and I have done a lot of hard work there. So I stepped off the army knowing that I will go ahead and, this is my purpose and this is my sole purpose, and how everyone talks about, like all the motivational speakers talks about life. I did the same thing. I trained, I used to train my army troops through this theater and all because it was damn fun. I started the same thing applying in the prison, and I saw them changing. I saw that that dark clouds just changed within 3 months, and I was interviewed, never got published because I had no answer. What happened? Like, why would you change? Like, if I come and train you guys, why would you change after doing theater and just dancing? So for me, that journey started there. Why art is so important? What happened? So I used dance movements for women a lot, and for men it was more singing, more theater, more painting. So over the 10 years, what has happened, that my uh, entire thing got into like this kind of cycle. I underwent my own panic attack, my own depression cases, because I lost my back. Like, I had a back injury in the army, which came into surface. So leaving army after 4 years, doing so many things in the industry and doing so many things, I had an identity crisis. I had absolutely no career, nothing, and I was turning 30. So like the double whammy of being a woman came into me, like my, I will have wrinkles and I will not get married and this and that. Yeah, it came into picture because it's easier right now, but then when you're facing it as a 27 or 28-year-old girl, it just becomes too much. It's overwhelming, as everybody has mentioned about. So now coming back to art based tools and nature connectivity, because it is easy. Also at the same point, your in Indian psychology, our मन सुना है ना? मन मन के अंदर मन हर जगह होता है. It is intuitive, it is inhibitive and exhibitive. So wherever आपका चित्त जाएगा, आपका consciousness जाएगा, उसके पीछे पीछे आपका मन जाएगा. तो मैं मन पे, मेरा मन लगता है, मेरा मन नहीं लगता है, ऐसा होता है ना. So to become the Pied Piper of Hamelin, art comes into picture. For men in specific who are not very expressive, coloring, painting just gives us a way out in order to understand their inner subconscious mind. The same thing happens when you do creative meditation through coloring, through nature connectivity, by being a plant lover, by doing little bit movements of organic movements as much your body needs to. So these all bring back the parasympathetic nervous system, as Alok said, into picture. Also that if you think too much, there are psychosomatic diseases. So right now, what we're handling in terms of yoga therapy is a lot of psychosomatic diseases. Psycho means like our psyche, and soma means our body. So specifically, the cruelest right now is PCOD and PCOS in women, which is just going left, right, and center, because we have become more. There is a lot of layered problems there. So I deal with those kind of problems. So these art-based tools actually help us to have a great sense of relaxation, and that art needs to come into picture. I think Prachi should be using, or I don't know, art is just beginning to come. But then Indian psychology, you know what, there is a trivia, there are 64 art forms in India. याद है ना, 64 कलाएं हैं हमारे इंडिया में, and there are 64 fluctuations of the intelligence. Like, they have nailed it. Like the Samkhya philosophy, the Indian philosophy have just nailed it, because it took me years to come back to the Indian classical wisdom, and they talk about everything. They talk about everything step by step. So these art-based tools and nature connectivity bring our entire self into a very easy manner. Very easy manner. You walk on the grass, you see the sunshine, you go to nature. Just doing that, it's completely a change of your mental and emotional state. Because if you look into the science of forest therapy or the nature therapy, things have to combine. So I do a lot of integration together. It's just not dance meditation. My dance meditation is based on yoga sutras. It is based on the positive psychology. It's not like just like you close your eyes and keep going round and round as what people think. No, 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 no. It's natural rhythm, because the moment you come into organic rhythm, your body synergizes. See, our body has amazing wisdom inside. So I help people to explore their own body and say, wow, I never thought like this way. So expression helps us to come out of our own repression. And also that I'm not a classically trained psychologist. I have a very different way out into this. But then Arushi, yoga therapy is a pure Indian psychology, and our Indian psychology says that, hey guys, look at it, nature is pretty much intelligent, nature is beautiful, so are you, let's get started. So it gives us a wholesome perspective, and I sincerely like it, because I have seen in my first class only everybody feels very gorgeous. And once you get inspired, I believe so, everything is possible. And rhythm also brings the integration of the polarity within. As
Uh,
Jay is an engineer,
yeah.
so the negative and positivity within us, the integration of our different sides, it helps us to become stable. That's why I do what I do.
Uh, so Alok, uh, men are not very expressive. They keep everything bottled up inside. How do you get them to talk?
Arushi, now this is not a black and a white side basically, because there are certain men who are really very much expressive as a baby, but there are few who are very much close. You cannot even go through them. So it is a subjective matter altogether. But as Jay and Sumisha rightly said about integrating the mind and the body, right? And when you talk about mental wellness, now it's unfortunate, Arushi. It's unfortunate that we only focus on the physical aspect of our well-being. But when we look at the wellness aspect, when we look at the health, the entire gamut, 85 to 90% is mental and emotional wellness, and only 10 to 15% is physical wellness. But we turn a blind eye towards mental and emotional wellness because somewhere I think that physical wellness is more fancy. You can go to gym, you can wear different stuff and then show off your brand. See, that becomes more fancy because people can see your body, people can see you transforming externally, and they can tell you things about yourself, and you like it, right? When you get those compliments, oh yes, you're looking good, you have lost so much of weight, wow, you're transforming. But no one can see through you and see into your minds and your thoughts and your emotions and your intention and tell you that, oh, you are not thinking the way you used to think 2 years back. If that was visible, then people would also start adding up on their mental and emotional wealth. Our mind and our body are highly interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. Our physiology and psychology are the two sides of the same coin. As Sumisha ji said, that man, I always tell this to my people that, अगर मन स्वस्थ होगा तो तन तंदुरुस्त होगा, तन तंदुरुस्त होगा तो जीवन जबरदस्त होगा. इसलिए मन और तन को हमें साथ में लेके चलना है. You cannot just have, two different aspects. Okay, today I will just think about my body and mind. It's okay. That's not very important. So when we talk about how do we change or connect to people who are not expressive, now, basically, many a times people are not expressive and they keep on, closing themselves. This is reflected in their body language. So generally, when I do my seminars in the classroom training, now what happens is whenever I go for a seminar, I just scan the audience in terms of how they are sitting, how they are holding up themselves, and you can actually tell whether they are open for your session or not. You can actually look at them and mentally you can make a note that who is open, who is not open, who will come with a question, and who will not even speak a word throughout the session, because their body reflects everything. Maybe we don't know what we are communicating, but someone rightly said that we speak, the communication is more on the emotional level and on the body language level, but vocal communication is a very little part of the entire communication basket. So when a person is closed and is not expressive, then target the physiology part of his existence. When you start getting him into some kind of movements, into some kind of mindful movements, into some kind of action, some kind of, the energy has to move. What do we really mean by emotion? Emotion is nothing but energy in motion. When you start channelizing your energy in different motion, that's when you start moving. That's when your entire stuff inside you starts moving, and that's when you start express. See, it's all about, you are packed very tightly. You are packed very tightly, and you don't want to open up. But when you start moving, that's when things flow easily. So if you're not able to emotionally connect with someone, start connecting on the physical level in terms of doing some activity and connecting, and automatically it will open up. As Sumesha rightly said, when we talk about various different ways of channelizing ourselves, the beauty lies in simplicity. But today people think that, it has to be something complex, some jargons or some kind of scientific names, and it has to come from some university, and then, I will pay for it and I'll get a change. No, as simple as going and walking in the lawn, just going and sitting at the river bank, or maybe going to the forest, or maybe in your bedroom, just close your eyes and sit and just try to connect with yourself, and magic happens, right? It all lies in your intention and what exactly are you wanting to look at. So we just need to remember that mind-body connection is super powerful. They are interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. And this mantra कि मन अगर स्वस्थ होगा तो तन तंदुरुस्त होगा, और तन तंदुरुस्त होगा तो जीवन जबरदस्त होगा. अगर इसको हम समझ ले, then wellness is not a big deal.
Prachi, taking a step back and coming to the identification of the problem, do you think it should be part of the curriculum in schools and colleges, and that the teachers should be trained to identify those problems in their children, because since students spend most of the time there?
Right, absolutely, Arushi. While it is true that not everybody can train to be a mental health professional, at the same time, it is also true that everybody can be trained to identify and recognize signs of distress. And this particular kind of training needs to be imparted not just to teachers, but any kind of people managers, whether it is organizations, whether it is schools, whether it is professors in universities. Because so many times, like I was talking to you in the first half of what I was saying, that everybody has this tendency to try and fix things, but not everybody is equipped to fix things. But everybody can be equipped to identify and then direct towards the right avenue where it really can be fixed. So yes, teachers being trained to identify children's signs, symptoms of distress would be a wonderful, wonderful way to step forward towards emotional coaching, because that's the age where children are most vulnerable. And many times unknowingly, I don't mean to say that everybody is cruel or malicious, unknowingly, a lot of teachers also tend to, and they are not wrong, they have like 50 children to deal with at once in one class sometimes. And it's not possible for them to pay individual attention to everyone. But once the mindset becomes like that, once they become coached, and there are training programs that can do that, you can coach people in emotional mental health first aid, where they are taught, normal lay people without any psychology background can be taught to identify signs and symptoms of distress. And I think, once you even develop that perspective, once you go through a training like this, your entire way of looking at things also changes, where you would have try to push somebody's concerns aside earlier, saying कि यार इतनी छोटी सी बात पे क्या रोना है, ये तो मतलब बाकी लोगों को देखो इतना बड़ा बड़ा काम करते हैं, तो इतनी छोटी सी बात. This is like the most common statement, and this is like the this is what I know, what I call toxic positivity. You can't generate positivity by telling someone that look, someone else has done better than you. You're literally invalidating what this person is feeling. So when you go through some training like this, your perspective also changes. You start to appreciate that pain is never comparable. Distress is never comparable. What is true for me is also true. I mean, your experience is true for you as my experience is true for me. I may feel extreme pain at a paper cut, and you may, face a bullet and not, be resilient to it. But then that doesn't make our truths comparable. So when teachers or any kind of people managers can go through trainings like this, it will open up their minds to just be non-judgmental towards someone else's distress. I think that is the only thing that is required: compassion and non-judgmental approach to everyone's pain. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to even do something drastic to help them. If you can just provide a non-judgmental safe space to everyone, automatically things are going to get much better.
Okay, so we have a question coming in. Prachi, these sessions are not very affordable. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's a complaint that comes from a lot of people, and I completely understand where that comes from, because mental health is supposed to be everyone's prerogative. Everyone should be able to afford mental health. There are two sides to this question actually. When it comes to affordability, uh, I, as a friend, can tell my friend that, come sit, talk to me. I'm there for you. All right. My friend can come and talk to me, all that. But because I'm not a trained professional, what if I end up saying something that triggers this person further, because I don't have an understanding of the psychological, biological, physiological processes undergoing, what this person is currently going through. So I may, while I have very good intentions, I may end up endangering this person, and it happens a lot in a lot of cases, which end up, going to the edge. So the idea that a mental health professional is, see, a mental health professional has trained and qualified for years through study, through whatever qualifications they have gathered. And while it is a noble profession, any healthcare, any helping profession is a noble profession. It is also everyone's bread and butter as well. And when they charge for their services, it is because, it is a service of quality. You are getting a certain quality, you are getting a certain um, elevation into the kind of help you will get. So I may be feeling distressed, and I might go to my friend, and I might spend an hour there, and I might feel good. We go out for lunch or coffee, and we feel good. But have I really learned the coping skills that will help me to deal with the problem that I'm going with? No. That a mental health professional will teach me. And why is that? Because that professional is skilled. So when people charge a fee for their service, people should understand that you are getting quality mental health help. When you go to a doctor, let's say somebody gets a diagnosis of cancer, wouldn't you want to go to the best specialist available? And you would do anything to make it work, whether you can afford it or you cannot afford it. So while professional mental health help is considered a luxury right now for people, people must need, understand gradually that it is a necessity, and it is something you deserve. You may think that treating yourself to a new pair of jeans by going to a mall is going to make you happy. It will not. What you really deserve is, probably you can spend the same amount of money with a couple of sessions with a trained mental health professional, and learn skills which will help you in every aspect of life, and that's important. uh, that's like, I'll tell you something. This is a very simple fundamental thing. These small things that we do for happiness, like going shopping or going out for coffee, or a lunch, or the distraction techniques that we use, they trigger a very different part of our brain, which is very similar to a high, and which triggers a very different neurochemical, which is known as dopamine. It can make you feel good in the moment, but it will not last. And when it will not last, when it will come down, you will be craving for more of that hit of high. And then slowly and gradually, you will need more of that stimulation to feel the same kind of happiness. This is not happiness. This is a fix which doesn't last. The things that Sumisha and Alok are talking about, they are the ones that trigger the different part of our brain and a different neurochemical known as serotonin, which is sustained happiness. When Sumisha was saying that, she doesn't know what happened when people, after undergoing weeks of that training, suddenly they were changing. This is exactly what was happening. She was not triggering their dopamine by giving them temporary highs. She was triggering their serotonin by giving them sustained happiness. Sustained happiness is what will last. Sustained happiness is what will give you resilience. Okay, it will give you hardiness, the ability to stand in the face of diversity, because nobody in the world can take away diversity, sorry, adversity. Nobody can do that. But what we can do is give you the tools and the strength to fight it when it comes. I'm not even saying if it comes, it will come. you know so that's what it is, and that's the positive side of going to a trained, qualified mental health professional. Even though it looks like you can't afford it, just think about the last pizza bill that you had, and then find out the charges that a mental health professional lists, and just compare and see whether you can afford it or you can't.
Prachi, you made a very valid point there. Now, coming to Alok, Mr. Srinivas Rao here has a question. How can you identify depression among children, and how can the family help the child?
It's not only about depression, Arushi, but any kind of negative emotion, right? Any kind of negative emotion is expressed through various different channels, right? As we just spoke about the mind-body connection. And before I give this answer, I'd like to add up to because it is related to children and youngsters, right? The earlier thing that where you asked Prachi about how about integrating it in the school days or the earlier childhood days. Now, the one problem that I identify here is that, see, when we talk about self-image, right? Self-image is very much valuable to us. It is like our asset, right? It's a prized possession. Now, when we talk about self-image, that is what we are cultivating right from our childhood. And then we are identified with our self-image. So when someone looks at us, we have a self-image that we have over a period of time cultivated. And there is another notion in the society which says that you need to be perfect. You need to be good. And you need to match certain levels, certain standards which are set by the society, certain benchmarks. And this is one of the biggest reasons that people, they hesitate to say that I'm going through some problem. Because then when they think that if I say that, I have these kind of problems, then it would destroy my self-image. What would people say? Dunya kya kahegi, log kya kahenge? So what I do is I start putting everything under the blanket. All right, everything under the blanket. And then if I have my cupboards empty, I'll also fill them up, but I'll not empty it because I'm just trying to protect my self-image. So now when it comes to the education society or when it comes to parenting, mindful parenting, the parents need to understand and educate their children that it's okay to feel bad. It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay the way you are. We are accepting it. Number one, you should accept yourself the way you are, because many times people, get introvert and they don't try to speak up. They say that, if I say this to my friends, they will just try to laugh at me. If I tell this to my parents, maybe, they will scold me, because parents, everyone wants a perfect model with them, and they'll start comparing their children. So parents, the parenting role becomes very much important here. Mindful parenting. Now, parents need to become a role model. If parents don't become the role model, then your child will start finding a role model outside. Today, why do we have so many influencers who are influencing children, and they go against their parents and they start worshipping someone whom they have not even met? You don't know who this guy or girl is on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. You don't even know, but they are your parents. Still, they go against. Why? Because they are able to influence your children comparatively on a greater scale. You have to become a role model for your child, and you have to start, radiating the kind of positivity that your children wants. So here, the parent needs to start with saying that, educating in the right manner, that it's okay to not be perfect. If you have this problem, everything has a solution. There is nothing in this world which doesn't have a solution. If you are not able to see the solution, that doesn't mean the solution doesn't exist. If a person goes on the top of the floor and he just says that I don't believe in the gravitational law and I'll still jump, what will happen? He will not start flying. He will still be down on the ground. Why? Because even if you believe or not, gravitational law works. Similarly, if you're not able to see a solution, that doesn't mean the solution doesn't exist. So here, you just need a different kind of perception. When you start putting things and situation in a different perspective, that's when you unfold and unbox different perception, right? So here, what the parents need to do is, first of all, identification, as rightly said by Sumisha and Prachi. You need to first identify, and the parents can only identify when they don't become judgmental, because today parents are also being judgmental. What if this, what if that? And then they will start talking to 100 different people. My child is like this, my child is like that. What do I do? And then there are so many things that keep pouring in, and the parents, they become confused. So number one, parents need to first educate themselves in terms of, if my child is going through this, it's okay. It's okay. That too has a solution. And then start educating yourself in terms of, what can I do? What are the ways available? And number two comes wherein what kind of knowledge and wisdom you're passing to your child. Because whatever you will communicate, your communication becomes his biology. because you are his parent. And whatever you will say, because the child respects you, listens to you, and somewhere he tries understanding that whatever my parent is saying, that's true, and that what becomes his belief system. So now you have to be super mindful in what you are communicating with your child. Number one, you have to identify. Number two, you have to communicate in a most mindful manner. And number three, then comes execution, where you handhold your child and then take the child in the positive front. And when it comes to communication, you also have to first identify, as I said. So identification in terms of the way he's communicating with you. Is he open? Is he free? Is he trying to, hide something? You have to be super aware of what's happening. Because as I told you, if you want to manage and handle anything in your life, whether it is your finances, whether it is your health, whether it is your child, you need to be first become aware of it. क्योंकि सजगता, हम सजगता की बात कर रहे हैं. Awareness is the primal principle, the underlying principle of the universe. So everything comes only after awareness.
So I know I got to come to you, Captain Sumisha, but Prachi has to leave at 12. So I'll ask a quick question from Captain Ameya here. He says that yesterday a family of 4 committed suicide in Pune, and typically a person or an individual may take a decision in some low moments, but when husband and wife take such decisions jointly and also kill their kids, that's bizarre. What would you advise such families?
When husband and wife also take a decision like this, it is also in an extreme low moment. See, a husband and wife, while they are also individual, they're also one unit. And what one feels also reflects on the other. The other also absorbs, what their partner is feeling. In a situation like this, the suicide, although it takes a lot of planning and probably premeditation on how it is to be done and what we are going to do about it. The act itself is a very impulsive act. That is why a whole lot of suicides, if you look at the trend, they will happen in the middle of the night when the isolation is more and the possibility of reaching out to someone else is very less. If you remember, there was this blue whale thing going on a while ago that when it used to tell people to take their own lives, it used to be at 3 a.m., 2 a.m., because that's the time when the person is least likely to go into someone else's room and wake them up and say that, I feel like taking my own life. Advice to families like this, that they need to understand, I completely agree with what Alok was saying, that if you don't see the solution, that doesn't mean the solution doesn't exist. There's a simple use of one word that you can use to change your entire perspective. I don't know the solution versus I don't know the solution yet. Okay. If you can't see it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You haven't, a lot of times when families like this take their own lives, they think they have failed each other and they think they have failed their children. But you haven't. You've come this far. You can go further. It's just that right now it's not visible. And it's not visible because you have completely closed yourself off from any other point of view. The only thing you need to do when you're feeling like taking this life, and first of all, taking the lives of your children is not your right. Just because they are your children, you have no right to take their lives as well along with you. So please think. Awareness again, just stop and think. When people take their lives, they don't want to end their life. They want to end the pain. So people around them need to, be really watchful. If we know when people around us are in distress, but we don't bring it up because it's uncomfortable for us to bring it up. It becomes an uncomfortable conversation. Or and I tell everyone, this is like a biggest myth, that if you talk to someone about are you thinking about taking your own life, you will plant an idea into their heads. That never happens. What it instead does is it gives this person to open up for a moment and come out with what's bubbling inside him. You cannot plant an idea of suicide if it's not already there. So please just if your partner is in distress, rather than going into the same distress along with your partner, empathize, yes, but support. And if one person cannot see it, the other person should try and get some help as a last resort. You've already hit rock bottom. It can't get worse than this, but there's always a chance that it can get better. If you don't do anything, it's 0%. If you do something, it's better than 0%. So, why not take that chance?
So quickly coming to the end, I would like to ask Captain Sumisha, we have a question here from Vasundhara who says...
Arushi, 1 second. I will interrupt. I just really have to leave. The other webinar is beginning.
Thank you so much, Prachi, for being with us. Thank you so much.
I'll get in touch with you, Sumisha.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Very nice to meet you, Sumisha and Alok and Jay. More power to you. I hope Ways to Overcome reaches the maximum amount of people, and you really get what you want to achieve. All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
So, quickly a question by Vasundhara who says that before traveling by air, particularly, I feel extremely anxious. Is that a problem? And what does she do, Captain Sumisha?
So traveling by air, most of the people get anxious. It's not very unique. It's pretty normal for people to kind of have that tremors inside. All you need to is that the way Alok has been saying, I also say that awareness is the key. You know that you are going to have that kind of problem. So generally for me also, when initially I have seen people when they are flying, you need to eat something, you need to breathe. You need to exhale a lot before you come, and this particular anxiety attack, like when you are sitting very quietly, you're inhaling and exhaling with the rhythm of your rhythm. There is a rhythm of equal exhale and equal inhale, and you because our jaws gets very tightened on anxiety. That's why you always get a candy or a chewing gum to eat, like even if you see. So, but this entire process will get rooted out over a period of time. So, Vasundhara, all you have to do is that you have to become more and more aware, and you will see how your mind starts responding instead of reacting to the situation. Some people, like for example, I have fear of heights. I have been working on it over the years. Though I know even if you put me at the highest point right now, still I will shiver. But if there is a case of something, I will maintain my sanity there, because everybody has a plus and minuses. It's got nothing. Some people are simply wary of going inside the water, getting into a lift. So we all have our set of problems, and if anybody tells you that you don't have a set of problem, that means it's all bullocks, because being a human, we all have set of weaknesses and strengths. So you got to do your lot of breathing exercises before you land on board on a plane. But then this anxiety can only be relieved by being more aware of it, and over the period you will see that, like, this entire, the more the mind understands, the body will stop reacting so violently. So and please be gradual on yourself, please be kind on yourself, please be like a baby on yourself. Like I always say that take those baby steps, you will still shiver. Like after 10 flying also, you will still have that problem, but then you will see it gradually. You cope up, gradually you cope up and come to a level of like a point where you can exactly sail through it. So have patience to break through with yourself.
So Jay, quickly before wrapping up, do you have a question for our panelists?
So just wanted to ask you that how do we train the corporates? How do we train the mentors in the school? Because I feel this is very much necessary, as they are the first people who can find out the symptoms.
So
so Alok, you can go.
Yeah,
Alok, sure.
Please go ahead.
So Jay, thank you for your question. Basically, I come from a corporate background, and whatever I'm doing right now, so I'm a mindfulness coach and a mental wellness trainer. So I come from and this comes from a practical experience. So I have 15 odd years of corporate experience with various different organizations. And over a period of time, I was able to see certain common behavioral and mental and emotional patterns, behavioral patterns that people used to go through. My bosses, my clients, my team members, I was able to see them. And even I fell prey sometimes. But somewhere, Jay, I have been practicing certain self-enhancement and self-enrichment practices right from the age of 15, which has really helped me to handle myself and channelize myself mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So as you rightly said, that corporates people really do require this, because when we talk about work, when we talk about corporates, we are executing in such a realm and in such a ground where ambiguity is at every corner. There's a lot of uncertainty, insecurity, fear, fatigue. We experience this, right? And today, if you see for the startups, for the entrepreneurs, they're completely upside down because they are not able to understand what to do. So that's where we bring in mindfulness, because mindfulness is basically a lifestyle change. It's not a skill, but it's a lifestyle change, and that's where you have to become aware of what exactly is going on. So this is what I call as the multi-level mindfulness model, right? Wherein you start integrating mindfulness at various levels in your life. So what we generally do is we start with basic awareness, and then we give certain frameworks and certain ways of coping up with. Because once you understand the basic awareness formula, once you understand the basic wisdom, then it's your skill how you start implementing it in your personal life, your work life, your family life, your interactions, your social life, your contribution. In each and every aspect of your life, you can do that. So as I told in the start of the webinar, I'm not sure whether you were there or not, but there are 3 levels at which we integrate mindfulness. Number 1, things which are happening in me, things which are happening with me, and things which are happening around me. When you become aware of this, you automatically will be able to get into charge. This stands true for corporates, for parents, for educators as well, right? So when I talk about in me, right, this is what you can share with others as well. When I talk about things which are happening in me, I'm talking about thoughts, my emotions, my interpretations, my belief systems, and my sensations, right? Because these are the things which only I can see, I can feel, and I can sense, but no one else will be able to see what's going in me in terms of my thoughts and emotions, right? Only I'll be able to become aware of it and take some action. When it comes to with me, that's when I'm talking about an interaction or an incident where I'm the epicenter. And when I'm talking about things that are happening around me, I'm talking about any situation where I'm not directly affected, but indirectly, yes, I'm affected. The best example is COVID-19. Now, I know that things are upside down, logistics is upside down, but indirectly, yes, I'm affected because I'm not able to move out. There's a lot of quarantine which is happening, but directly I'm not affected. But now if someone has a positive member in the family, then the person comes in the second level where I need to become aware of things which are happening with me. Then, there will be a lot of emotions, a lot of thoughts. And, if the most worst condition, if you or if I'm, having this positive thing, then I am crazily into that negative thought spiral and emotional spiral. So once you start implementing this multi-level mindfulness model automatically in corporates as well, because what happens is there's a lot of work aversion. When you talk about work, there's a lot of work aversion. You don't like a particular work. Now, because we bring in judgment, this work is such and such, I don't like this kind of work. But when you bring in a lot of awareness, that's where you create a space between you and your work. And in that space, you unbox the power of choice. And then you start looking at that work from a different perspective. And then you start seeing a work that, okay, this is something different. Yes, I can, do it in a different manner. It can actually help me bring out certain positiveness from inside me. So, if you start implementing this in all aspects of your life, then you can actually start doing that with your corporates, with your educators as well.
Thank you so much.
Quickly, so a lot of startups are now going belly up. A lot of people are losing jobs, and you've been working with a lot of organizations. Yeah. Your message to the entrepreneurs.
So basically, Arushi, there are 2 things. I generally tell this. There are 2 things that an entrepreneur or a startup or an organization needs to look at. Number 1 is survival. And number 2 is revival. You can only revive if you survive, right? Now, when I talk about survival, it is basically doing an analysis of your current position, of your current business position, because many a times we either underestimate or we overestimate. If you start overestimating things that, I'm hit, things are bad in the market, then you will get into the panic mode. You will be in fear and you will not be able to think out of the box, be creative. And if you underestimate, "Arey, kuch nahi hua yaar, theek ho jayega," then you may become careless, right? So what you have to do is start looking at things as they are. Try to do an analysis, a SWOT of your business right now, that what position you are, and then start fixing it by doing minor tweaks. Because what happens is, see, you already have the resources, the infrastructure ready. Now the only thing is you have to look at the logistics. I'll give you my example. Because of our training nature, we had more of the physical training nature, wherein we do the classroom training method. But because of COVID, we are not able to move. But then what we did is we had our basic infrastructure ready, we had our notes ready, we had our content ready. We just shifted our platform. Now from physical, we are on digital. And digital, we are able to move fast only because we are able to think clearly and we were not in panic. This is the first thing. And at this, the second thing that all the entrepreneurs and the corporates need to look at is the buyer behavior, because the buyer behavior is changing completely. Because of COVID, the purchase decisions that consumers are making, that is completely different. Now it's not about luxury, but it is about essentials, because people are diving deep in their pockets, in their savings, their contingency plan. So at this moment of time, they are not ready to just splurge out money. So now the businesses and the startups need to understand the buyer behavior. And number two is start looking out for horizontal expansion of your business. Vertical expansion can be difficult because then you are switching into a different domain altogether. But when you talk about horizontal expansion, you already have the basic knowledge and basic wisdom. You just have to come up with extensions on the site. So it can be a complementary product or complementary service wherein you can do it all digital, wherein you basically connect with the basic needs of the consumer. So it's a two-level plan A, plan B. Plan A is all about surviving. Plan B is all about reviving.
Captain Sumisha, your message to the entrepreneurs.
See, since I come from the yogic wisdom, one thing I know that when you're feeling vulnerable, when you're feeling shitty from inside, it's all these words just remain words. Like no matter how much of information you have, how much of intellect you have, it all goes outside the window. This awareness in itself is not there. Even if you know that you need to be aware, like I'm just angry with something, it's so difficult to get back, like specifically when you're married, so if you're married, if you are angry with your husband, this shows the fragility of being human. So right now I'm advocating, see, your work is here, your life is here. Have some more dignity to life, because nobody else is giving dignity to your life. In this scenario, and from here going onwards 50 years more up, it's going to be more weirder, it is going to be more consumeristic, it's going to be more war-like situation, it's going to be a lot of hatred, a lot of lynching, everything. The world is going to the dogs. Yet would you make a choice to take care of yourself? Because one dignified human can look after so many humans. It's very important to look into your emotional intelligence, look into nurture yourself, look into do something so creative, look up the word creativity beyond, look up creativity for life. Something has to give you nurturing. Now how can you feel beautiful? I'm asking you to feel positive every day. It's not easy, it's so mundane, it's a mundane life. We are not dancing together, we are not coming together, like we are not having a spirit. It's so much of transactional world. I find it difficult coming from the forces. I want to get back to a government job now and then, not because that I'm not successful here, because it's so transactional. Every meeting I do, it's transactional, because it's somewhere related to my chance or to my career or to my client. So even if I'm dealing emotionally, I have taken my time to become a coach, it's difficult because I see there's so much of, again, the rat race is the same for me as well. So I am being as genuine as possible, and in saying that we humans need to take into hand the act of self-dependency. Bhagavad Gita says that self for the self. And the moment you start working on yourself, something comes from within, which is like, what comes like, wow. So because that's a science of the human wisdom, and the Fibonacci series is all over in the universe. So we have to understand this mysticism of the universe, the spirituality of the universe needs to get aligned with the spirit of being human in today's time. Whether you're very successful entrepreneur, not successful entrepreneur, we need to get this thing 2 out of 2, specifically boys who are completely into this. Women have a different set of characteristics when they come for all these mental health issues. They are a completely different species, though we are both human beings. So like, I'm not generalizing, it's out of my own I'm a woman, so I know how do I deal and how much I have to look into my own emotional strategy. But then for men and women, we all have to have a lot of bona fide strategies. But then for entrepreneurs, for everybody who's into business, your life is different from your business. You may or might not be very successful here, but then this is the promise that you will get your. Nobody can take anybody's peace. Actually, on the ending note, I was just speaking to a cobbler on the street. How do you feel happy? I speak to the kuda wala who comes here and picks up my like he's 70, he picks up the dustbin. Everybody is like sinking in their hearts, and he is taking out the worst of the worst of the garbage from our houses. So we need to sort out our garbage, the backstage management. You need to know if you're ethical, if you're being too. Everybody understands if you're ethical as an army, like if you have integrity or not. Because if you do not have an integrity, if you everything is transactional, your anxiety, your depression comes from that transactional side of the thing, and life is non-transactional. So this little bit of spirituality, little bit of this has to come together as one. So my entire request is to like young people like Jay, like as Socrates said, that you will never know how maximum power you have when you are young. So have the dignity of life, and just कहते हैं ना, जिंदगी के सदके हम जी के जाएंगे, like कभी कभी सब कुछ खत्म हो जाता है, लेकिन human resilience is something so beautiful. So once we start working on that, everything looks okay. And yeah, failure is a part of the success. It cannot happen that you will always be successful, because out of 100 people there are 99 who are not successful. So what about them? Are you not supposed to have a good life? And there are many things, so we need to increase our sense of self to universal self. So that way will make life easy, and then we can dance on the uneasiness and easiness of life at the same time. So please be easy on yourself. Do not push yourself to an extent, and see, and also know that the science of life says that nobody can take your inner peace once you get it. So that's why.
Once again, thank you so much, Captain Sumisha. Thank you, Alok, and thank you, Jay, for joining us. And I hope we have been able to do our bit and help people out there who are undergoing stress, anxiety, and depression. I hope more and more people come out in the open and hold frank and open discussions with their family members on what they're going through. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you,
And
Arshi.
stay safe. I wish you all the best.